Welcome to lesson number 7 of Mastering Positional Techniques, and today we're gonna be taking a look at some aspects of piece exchanges. And the first concept is Botvinnik's prescription. But what does that mean? So basically Botvinnik was thinking that, and in general, it's a positional technique, you gotta trade the pieces which block the entrance for your pieces. So let's take a look at the following position. Capablanca was playing against Alekhine. I think it was in World Chess Championship match. And here it was Alekhine move, and he played Bishop e6. So the point is he should have potentially capped his bishop on c8. But why? So here, he kind of, it's no big deal here because the position still stays equal, but it's a lot easier to play with white pieces than it is with black because white have a clear plan and black just don't have it. So, and here this bishop was blocking d7 square from, let's say, rook that can potentially go to d3, from the queen that can potentially go to d3, but now after bishop e6, and bishop trade, we take the d file, and now we're threatening to go rook d7. So black played queen f6, queen b3, attacking the pawn on b7, queen e7, and now, you kind of see that white have d file, white have target on b7, and it is a serious problem. Takes, and he has to do this move to create space for the king, and white got an initiative in this game. They have the d file, and it's a lot easier to create threats. Now let's take a look at the second example, and this one has more pieces on the board but has kind of similar idea. So here you might see that bishop on d6 blocks the d file, this pawn on c7 protects this bishop. So if you first start calculating things here, different moves here, you would first probably play bishop c2, to get the bishop from this knight. But yeah, then you have to calculate knight c4, rook d3, then the rook kind of goes on the third rank to g3. So might get dangerous, but we put two rooks on the d file, and we want to slide them somewhere along that beautiful d file, and white played knight b6. So first of all, it is a fork. We're forking bishop, we're forking rook, the rook is under attack. So black decided to first take rook d6, and once again it's slightly easier to play with white pieces. They have the d file now, rook d7, takes, queen h4, h3. Once again they took the initiative, and it's a very hard position to play with black pieces. Hope you understood the concept. Let's get and move on to the next one. The second concept we're gonna look at is exchanging bishops in order to weaken a complex of squares. So let's take a look at this funny position. White have an absolutely horrible pawn structure, and all their pawns are placed on the dark squares. And the best thing here would be to trade light squared bishop off the board and have all this light squares in your availability for black pieces. And black start by playing first taking on c3, and after b takes c3 they play bishop f5, and you try to basically trade light squared bishop. And you might ask, what's the point of trading and potentially using light squares if you trade your own light squared bishop? But the problem is, guys, look at the structure and look at the weak squares around white's king. This knight on c5 will potentially go to e4, d3 will, but maybe even break through by playing f6 at some point, and then bring our rook to e8, and then just, the position should collapse. It is completely winning for black pieces, and they ended up winning this chess game. Now let's take a look at the second example. White have two bishops, but again, it's not so clear as to what they can do, what plan they can implement. They play king b3 first. After bishop f8, they play bishop b5, and now they trade the bishop of the board. Two to weaken the squares, the complex of squares. In this case, b5 square, so nobody can reach the king on b5. Let's say potentially what setup could have been happened is, let's say rook c7, something like, imagine if king was on b5, bishop on c4, and rook somewhere. Yeah, it's still hard, knight a7 checkmate potentially, but it's, yeah, because king always runs to a6, but it's still very dangerous. In this case, bishop is being traded, and now this b5 squeed b5 square is under our control. Rook d7, the rooks are off the board, rook has open d-file, and white easily win this chess game. Now let's get to the next concept of this exchanging lesson. Let's go. The next concept is the Bishop Zigzag, neutralizing the good bishop. Let's take a look at the following position. The bishop on d6 is probably slightly better than its opponent on g5, and here white performs so-called zigzag move. They first move bishop on h4, and after rook e they move their bishop to g3, trying to trade it off. It now has less effectivity, and white are slightly better. Now let's take a look at the match between Karpov and Kasparov from 1984-1985. Karpov was playing with white pieces, and here he has much more active bishop on d3 than the bishop on c8 of Kasparov. And here Kasparov performs so-called zigzag move. He first moved his bishop to g4, and after logical f3 he moves his bishop to h5, setting up bishop g6 idea. He wants to trade it off. h4 was played castle, and after g4 bishop g6. Now these bishops are traded off the board. b3 takes, rook e8, rook c1, c5, bishop f4, rook c8, d takes c5, knight d7, and Kasparov went on winning this game. He got the initiative here and has better chances. Now let's take a look at the next concept of this video. Let's go. The next concept is so-called Capablanca setup against Carlsbad structures. So here, he was playing with black pieces, and usually, you know, in Carlsbad, white are trying to use minority attack on the queen side. And here Capablanca plays knight d6, and it's multifunctional move. It stops b5 from happening. It also stops different maneuvers in the center. Here white played e4, and after takes, knight e8, Capablanca, you know, can get his knight to f6, g4, and there is no longer minority attack on the queen side. Black are no longer in danger, and black, you know, have an equal position. In this specific example, you know, it's very interesting. Again, Carlsbad structure, white played queen b3, and unfortunately for black pieces, they played b5 and went on losing this chess game. Instead, what he should have played is rook e7, and now the point is he wants to trade this bishop off the board, and he has no troubles later on. He has some h5, h4 ideas. This position is, according to the computer, actually a lot better for black pieces. Why b5 is so bad, and especially in Carlsbad structures? It would have been a good move if white's pawn was on b4 as opposed to b2. Because then, you know, if we play b5 immediately, then, you know, yeah, the idea is to place knight on c4. But the pawn is on b2, and you always have b3. And the problem is, once b3 is played, this knight will have to go back, and you create a huge weakness on c6. While if this pawn on b4, imagine pawn on b4, and then we play b5, then knight can slide to c4. And this would have been a great choice. But unfortunately, b5 immediately is just a horrible move, and black ended up losing this chess game. Now let's get to the final concept of this lesson. The last concept of this lesson is leave the opponent with his superfluous pieces. What does that mean? So from time to time, pieces are aimed at single square on the board. In this case, it will be e5 for black pieces, and let's call one piece occupies this main square. In this case, black played knight f5, And two other pieces in this case, knight on f7 and bishop on g7, protect this e5 knight. And Dvoretsky discovered that in these cases, it's best choice to avoid trades, because then you kind of leave other pieces kind of dumb, looking at one central squares while only one occupies it and actually makes this work. So in the following position, Alekhine, who was playing with white pieces, played knight d4 and left black with so-called superfluous pieces, knight on f7 and bishop on g7, as opposed to letting the trades happen, and then, you know, knight can take, bishop can take, and the fight continues. That way you kind of keep the pressure on the board. Another example is this one. So this is the starting position. Both knights are trying to fight for d5 square, and even though the next move is best according to computer, according to the book that I'm, you know, analyzing, and to several experts, this move is actually a positional mistake. Because black played knight s7, they're offering a knight trade, but the problem here, this knight on b4 wasn't really performing any functions, like it doesn't have, you know, a purpose in its life. And here, you know, this knight trade will actually help, you know, white to occupy this crucial square with only one piece. And eventually what happened is white got just an absolutely insane position, black got no counterplay, and ended up losing this chess game. I hope you guys enjoyed this chess lesson. If you don't understand something, let me know in the comment section down below. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.